All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. We don't have anything nearly as interesting as Larry was last week, but I see a lot of the same faces. Um, just to be clear, this is a town board workshop to discuss proposed zoning changes. It's part of a year and a half long effort we've done to change a lot of zoning, not just the map, but other things. It's a result of the adopted comprehensive plan and updating our zoning to be in accordance with a comprehensive plan. One thing there seems to be a little bit of misconception about it. This is not a public hearing. We had the public hearing last week, a public hearing last week. We have a public hearing scheduled for our April 27th meeting, but depending on what happens here, I'm pretty confident that we won't be ready yet to move forward with the legislation at all. So we likely will tonight cancel that public hearing for the 27th, which will mean we'll set another public hearing probably sometime in May. This is still a work in progress. I don't want anybody to get, all upset and think that we're, done with this. We heard a lot of comments last week at our meeting, and we are actively reevaluating the process and the areas that you're all concerned about. So as I say, this is a town board workshop to discuss our zoning, and I think I'm going to let our consultant, Bob Murphy from Barton and LaJudas, start us off.
Sure. Thank you, Cynthia. And I'm Bob Murphy. Been working with the town on the zoning code update for the last year plus. I was here for the public hearing 2 weeks ago. I went through a bit of the history of how we've gotten here from a process standpoint, and some of a summary of the changes that we had proposed. And just briefly, as Cynthia mentioned, we changed more than just the map. It was a lot of cleaning up of outdated processes and references, even in the form-based code area. Other items such as making square footages allowed fit, just changing the number to make it more like an acre, just so that the measurements are a little easier, small changes in context. But those needed to be updated throughout the chapter. However, the main thing that came out of the comprehensive plan affecting the zoning code had to do with the maps, and there were two features to that. One was that the comprehensive plan said we want to protect more of our natural resources, and at the same time focus development on areas that have already been developed and provided with infrastructure in those primary commercial corridors. So to do that, the land conservation zone was expanded through a methodology that started with the DEC wetland regulations, which I'll get to in a second. And then to pair that in the commercial corridors on Route 9 and Route 67 primarily, the open space requirement of 50% was reduced to make those properties more developable and to focus that new development in areas that already had it and had already been developed. So that is where we got to today. I'll start off by also saying that last week at the state level, the law that is the DEC freshwater wetlands law update was struck down, was annulled by the New York State Supreme Court. So there's a lot of questions with that right now that we don't know the answers to, but that did form the basis for the methodology for that LC district. So that's something that we're reconsidering right now.
So I wasn't here last week, unfortunately. Maybe a good thing. But
No, it was good. It was a good meeting. Everybody was respectful. And
I went back,
So-
I read all the emails, I listened to the internet tape on it this morning. It's very concerning that it was annulled without any path forward. My feeling is, at this point, because they don't know the path forward, can't we keep this as we had it, because it still has the 5 acre restriction on it that we put forward several years ago to control large-scale development, but it still restores the right of a homeowner. My understanding at this point, depending on its clarity, which is very, very gray, that's the only path forward until the state gets their act together. And I first heard about this back in February. I knew it was going to be a disaster. And I talked to several engineers about it. I talked to, they looked at me and said the same thing. Any real estate broker trying to sell a piece of property with that vagueness is very, very concerning to me. I love the open space. It's been open. There is a 5 acre, 4+ restriction on the property anyway, so it can't go crazy. But that's my feeling until somebody can convince me otherwise. It's just very vague. And the town did their homework with the comp plan. We listened to the people. We took action on it. And now it's just as vague now as it was then. So that's my overall feeling at this time.
And just to build off of that, because this was the new DEC wetland law was struck down, that means they are reverting to what they had previously, correct?
We don't know.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
We should have information on that part shortly. You know, it's possible that the broader picture of the new regulations might not get resolved for months. But I think we'll know what they'll recommend reverting to in the meantime.
Okay.
Nothing in the courts and nothing in government works fast, though.
Right.
I mean, it's that simple. And we got to make a decision.
Adrian is out today, so we haven't really had an opportunity to see what our mapping expert comes up with. He did the modeling. There are a couple of suggestions that we're kicking around to have less LC, which, you know, we've heard from a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of residents. I've looked at a lot of properties. So again, I think there's more work to be done. So, as I said, one of the major overriding concepts in the comprehensive plan was to protect the Drummond Creek watershed. Now, you know, this is probably over vast. You know, the other watersheds that are identified are already protected. They've already been zoned LC, the Cateros and the Ballston Creek on the previous map, and parts of Saratoga Lake. The other thing is protecting the Saratoga Lake watershed. So I think that there are areas that are very justified to be LC. They're generally constrained anyway and can't be developed on, so to try to protect that. But again, I think we need to take the time to take a really hard look at this, and for now, just, you know,
So
look some more.
what's our options that we're
To
considering, if any?
Well, one of the things that we're considering is taking, one of the things that I talked a little bit to Steve about earlier, is possibly taking anything that's in the ag district out of the LC and reverting it back to its former zoning, because if it's in the agriculture district, they have certain rights anyway. And there's a pretty big swath of property that's both in the Brownell Road area, which is the part of the Drummond Creek, and Malta Ridge that are in the ag district. So that could be part of a solution that would limit it some?
Can I ask you clarification? Are you proposing not touching the existing current is LC, but what's being proposed if you're pulling out there are some wetlands up on the north side that would fall within, or LC, I'm sorry, that falls within the ag district of the ballets. I want to make sure that
That's
the
up- that-
the
that's
existing.
right along the lake.
Correct. Up in there that's existing, you're not proposing to change the existing LC.
LC. I'm not
It's
proposing
what
to
you're-
change the existing LC.
I just want to clarify. I'm saying it for the record because if somebody tells me later, no, you said,
You can't block the exit over there, so,
I'm trying to protect our map maker.
thank you.
And the other thing also is the elevation is a lot higher
Oh, steep slopes, yeah.
along the lake.
You provided us these nice elevation maps, if I can find them.
And then that's just a, one suggestion, until we actually take a hard look at the, the changes in the law and the actual, mapped wetlands. It's just kicking it around.
Yeah, the timing of the ruling, on one hand, the town hasn't adopted anything new
Right.
yet. So there's an opportunity to make an adjustment now. We know that government doesn't move fast, as you said, so it's possible that the town might want to reconsider things in a year from now when they do rule on it. You can always do that. So those are a couple paths forward.
I just wanted to add, first off, I really like your idea of, whatever's in the ag district, just keep that as R8/agricultural. I think that's
Or 5.
R5. So both R8 and R5. Thank you for the. I think that,
How come you clap when he says it, but you don't clap when I say it?
I think they were clapping for you.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine, and no, thank you, everybody, for your thunderous applause.
Yeah.
But I think this really gets to the heart of the problem, because nobody here, I've said this to residents
Yeah.
out here, I've said this to you guys in random conversations. Nobody here is working against the town. Everybody here is trying to do the right thing, and it's finding that balance between what the adopted comprehensive plan has. Preserving our environmental resources is one of them, but then also trying to preserve agriculture and promoting farming. And so I think the more that we can engage with our residents, so whatever these affected properties may be, it might take longer, but because the state's going to take its sweet old time with this DEC rolling, is it not beneficial to probably engage with the residents up there and start asking them about their properties specifically?
Well, that's probably why we're back here looking, because we heard from a lot of people last week at the public hearing that they were unhappy, and a lot of letters.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, probably 50 letters. I'm still getting them half a dozen a day, so. And anybody that wrote, they will be included in the official record, so.
But and that's I think, as long as we can find that happy medium, because I think everybody in this room, and I apologize if I'm misspeaking for them, but I think we're all in agreement for wanting to protect the natural environment and also trying to promote farming and agriculture up there as well. And
'Cause,
so,
I mean, the biggest goal for basically in the comprehensive plan, just so you know, is it identifies areas that we want to keep the rural character. 2 of those areas specifically are the Brownell Road, Raylinsky Road area, to keep that as a rural character, and then, of course, the entire north end of town, Malta Avenue Extension, Nelson Avenue Extension, to be able to keep that rural. I mean, really, the development pressure is more serious on the Brownell Road because there's water there. I mean, I bet most of you know there's really not any water up on the ridge. So, huh? Yeah. So what else? Any other comments from anybody about the path forward? Any other comments about the other general zoning? I mean, some of the things that just, because y'all haven't been here for all the time. A couple of things that were changed in our general zoning The keeping of hens, we're allowing hens now that in places that previously weren't allowed. 20,000 square feet, 20,000, is that how, the size? 20,000 square foot, lots, lot minimum size.
20,000 square feet.
We did change some, minor things, a lot of things that people were regularly going to the zoning board and getting variances for. We worked very hard on tightening up our plan development district legislation. It's a lot more, there's a lot more time for review. It gives the planning board, who are the experts on that, a lot more time to review it and get back to us. So it's kind of a back and forth between planning staff and the town board.
Some very specific, is it working right? Situations in the form-based code for the planning board to be able to weigh in for the curvature of the road, for setback and frontage requirements in some of those parcels as well.
We added solar legislation. The town of Malta has never had any solar legislation, so we added some solar. Well, right now, the solar is not even addressed in our code, which the assumption is then it's not allowed because it's not allowed use. But the state is pressing municipalities, and if you don't have a solar law, then they can decide what gets built in your town. So we thought it was in our best interest to actually adopt a law. You want to tell what?
Sure. Well, yeah, I'll speak a little bit more to that. So, as the supervisor said, it's advisable to have your own regulations, and especially on the larger scale side of solar. ORIS, the Office of Renewable Energy, at the state level has pretty broad jurisdiction over large solar projects. However, if a municipality has regulations where they don't want it, where they want it, how they want it, the developer, even of that statewide significance, has to abide by the local jurisdiction. They have to do their best to. They have to. So it's really recommended that the town has that regulation in place.
So
Because we also don't want to see a lot of solar farms up on Malta Ridge.
Yes, but as part of that process, they do have to consider the local zoning district if you address it at all.
we can attempt to complain.
Yeah.
So that's something. So I do have two questions. One's a bit more procedural and one's about our proposed changes. So because the DEC ruling has kind of thrown our proposed zoning out the window, does that stop us as the board and the town at least getting the changes to, to Law 167, or I guess our zoning codes? Can we implement those and still, hold off and pause on the zoning updates?
No,
Oh, you have to take it all as one?
right. It's because they're hand in hand.
Okay,
So, and it's all about, seeker. We have to do seeker review.
okay. And the other question, so I've talked about hens and chickens for a lot for someone who does not own them but likes to eat them. So as it stands, you can have 12 now with the revised policy.
Right, and this doesn't count for, obviously, farms, right? This is,
If you want to be a chicken farm.
this is basically neighborhood farms, neighborhood chickens.
So my question with 12, I think 12 is a good number for what should be the maximum size, but because we've learned that you can only buy them in groups of 6, if one chicken is to die, that was what
Then
originally facilitated
right.
this. So should it not be 12, but should it basically be no more than 17? I hate to be this technical.
It was 6 originally. We made it 12 because you don't want to have 5.
I just, if it's not
No,
12,
no, because the other part is, we're talking about, it's possible to have 12 chickens on a half-acre lot.
yeah,
If we go any more than that, that's a lot of chickens in a neighborhood.
okay.
So,
Speaking about density, you're talking about chicks.
Chicken density.
Was the density in the form-based code At all.
No, but we effectively reduced,
Especially for
we,
apartments.
we effectively reduced it by 20% when we took the density bonus out,
Right.
which we did that before any of this. So, yeah,
Had to.
it was reduced by 20%.
Yeah, that was the senior bonus, correct?
Yeah,
And you had effectively reduced it in 2017 by having 15 units.
right.
15 units per 40,000 square feet.
My concern is the exit 12 density going forward.
That's already been reduced because Fidens is 4 acres is out.
Because what?
Fidens.
4 acres that is subdivided out for the Fidens Brewery is already reducing their numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, so just,
You know, Craig,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to talk to you about that offline.
Okay.
You want to do that?
I mean, she asked if there was any other
Yeah,
questions.
no,
and
good,
So I spoke.
yeah.
I mean, I.
If
I
you,
understand your concern.
it's,
I
yeah,
get
it's if
Lots of
you,
calls
yeah.
on that, so.
So if you want to, I think she's saying if you want to talk about that particular project, it's easier to do it in her office when,
Okay, fine.
I'd be happy to talk
yeah.
outside of this venue.
and then the other one, so we're still not allowing roosters? Was that
No
be-
roosters, right?
primarily because of noise concerns?
Yes.
Okay. I personally, granted, I never grew up on a farm or next to people who own chickens or roosters for that matter, so I'm naive and not really speaking from a position of strength. I do think, I don't know, I think it's something at least to consider potentially. It is a part of how a natural flock of of chickens operate, is a bunch of hens and then you have one rooster.
Then you exceed 12.
Well, oh, all right. Well, could we have a provision for one rooster? That's
There's other concerns about roosters. And again, we're talking about neighborhoods. We're not talking about areas that are 7 acres or more or any of that.
well, and I guess the other question, and this is more procedural. We have to follow all of our, the secret process. Everything is laid out by New York State. Barring, as we've seen the issue now with the Supreme Court here, how quick are we, in relatively ideal circumstances, as the board able to make updates? Let's say 12 chickens is too much, or it's not enough, or something is silly that we need to change some part of the code. How quickly are we able to react?
I mean, it's a process of setting a public hearing, referring to the county and adopting a local law.
Okay,
So, and doing secret review, right?
so,
So,
months.
right.
2
No,
months.
2 months max for something if we agree on a change. This has
Okay.
taken so long because it's an extensive
Oh,
overhaul of our entire zoning code.
yeah, but if we found a typo on one line, we could do it relatively quickly.
Yeah, typo, you wouldn't even need, if it's a typo, it wouldn't
Right.
rise to the level where you'd have to do a whole public
Okay.
hearing situation. But, yeah, we've had examples elsewhere where, codes or plans, they get adopted in this wholesale manner, and then something comes up, maybe a year later, they said, oh, we should update that. You go through the statutory process, through public hearing as well as seeker, and you can adopt it in a couple weeks. So,
And there
All
will
right.
be things. We'll get this code adopted, and in 6 months, we'll realize that there was something if we ever get it adopted.
well, yeah, and you'll probably have more information on the seeker law.
Right.
Well, this warms my heart to hear then, because that I am all for iterative design. If we can get 85, 90% of the way there on the first go, we can then take the time to fix whatever holes there are and always just try and move that needle forward. So that's awesome.
So, does anybody have anything else we need to talk about tonight? Because we'll take another stab at the map, see if we can make a few people out there a little happier. It's,
Pull out the ag district.
I would pull out the ag districts in both places. And that shouldn't affect our build out.
Not significantly, no.
right.
Especially because if we're changing less, that's less of a change.
Right. True.
Would you be able to, at least on one version of that refined map, outline the ag districts in like a red dotted line or something, just to show to anybody looking at it, like here,
Maybe.
is that possible? I don't know if we have these layers or not, so.
Or can we get a separate map for our own?
Well, the Saratoga County, you're looking for what's in Malta's ag district, you want Malta's ag district map?
Yeah.
I will inquire with Adrian on,
Like,
I'm sure we can get that. I'm sure I can get it from the county. It's online.
right, it is, you can see.
You can see it
the ag
online.
District online. But you want one made specifically for us.
I mean, I guess what I was saying is if you took a map like this, and if it's, in my mind, it sounds simple, which means in practice it's probably not. You can't just overlay a square where the ag district is and be like, and,
it's getting a little
It's
complicated
a
now
very
anyways.
busy map already.
yeah.
So I would direct you to the Saratoga County GEIS map.
Malta's
Okay.
Agriculture
and
District
click
number
on
2.
the ag district.
Yep.
there.
Oh, all right. If that resource already exists, then the last thing I want you to do is double the work.
And maybe Adrian already has a layer somewhere for the town in his GIS materials. I just think throwing it on our zoning map,
It's a busy map.
it's very, very busy.
That I agree with. I meant more as a reference document. So,
We can definitely try to pull that one out.
I mean, it doesn't, I don't know if you need to, if you said it's already there. So,
Nice to see.
So I can still have a garden now?
You can always have had a garden,
You pr-
Making sure,
always.
I don't think you can have chickens though.
you know what?
Yeah,
Not in-
yeah.
I've seen chickens running around my son's house down in Nashville area.
they're good for
It
ticks.
was,
So anybody else have any other comments about what we should do about the LC or just
Well, I just
wait
wanna-
until?
I want to also remind the board that the LC is not only inclusive of just the wetlands. It also included steep slopes.
Right.
So we've had some comments about, it's up on a hill. Yep, your property might be up on a hill because it has 15% slope or greater. And our town code already addresses that in section 167-21, streams, buffers, and steep slopes restrictions, which, we can't disturb 15% slopes or greater. So those were also included in this area. That's why you see some of the stuff around the lake where it's steep.
Yep.
Or you have people, you feel like you have something that's random and you feel like your land is up on a hill. That could be why. It's also zoned LC. So there were multiple factors used to create the LC zone.
And this map reflects what was the legislation that was nullified, so that's gonna, if we go back to what the original wetlands delineation are, it's gonna make everything
So
smaller. The
you
check
would
check areas?
Oh, are you preferring that the previously mapped DEC wetlands be used rather than the current, actually ones that were nullified?
I think we almost have to,
Okay.
don't you?
I want to be clear
Yeah.
about the instructions that we're going to give Adrian to do to make a new map.
it's in the courts, so, I
Yep.
mean, and courts can move slow and they can be appealed and gone to a higher level, so I think we ought to just kind of stand back and wait for the advice.
Well, hopefully,
Head up with a bow saying, we're sorry, Adrian, you gotta make another map.
yep.
It's not going to be easy. I want the board to be aware that it is extremely time-consuming, so it's not happening in a month.
That's okay. I think, well, too, not for anything, could Adrian even proceed right now, considering there's no immediate information from the DEC on what they're defining currently as a wetland? Like, I don't think he could start work tomorrow.
And this is why I'm asking, are we going to assume to use the previously mapped DEC?
I mean, that's what I was saying. Does that make sense? Bob?
That's what I would go with.
That's
Does
the
it-
only thing that's,
Oh, here's-
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just gotta get closer to the
Right,
microphone.
so
Rachel.
I was clarifying with the town board to make sure that the direction for planning staff is to use previously mapped DEC wetlands, not the wetland mapping layers that were nullified.
And then, so do you think that is,
I think that's reasonable right now. I don't know, Steve, I don't know if you've heard any other updates on what we might hear soon, but it is kind of up in the air.
Well, I haven't heard any updates. I mean, it's what, 3 days, well, 3 business days old or so. So I think those are in the works. But what one thing is clear from the decision itself, it's not that the wetlands regulations were unconstitutional or a statutory violation. It's that the state didn't comply with seeker. So there is a lot of guidance within the decision restating, other cases and other law, but on the direction that needed to be taken by this, the state, which also applies to the town. For example, when we're considering changes to the LC district, the area which the town is addressing now is where the state got in trouble. They had a sort of a blanket determination that the 100-foot regulation was going to be appropriate across the entire state, and the court said no. So when we look at our LC, we can't make the same mistake and just have a blanket analysis. So, your decision or your thoughts or conversation go back to the old one, is partially correct. We just have to take a hard look at sites that would warrant environmental protection. So if we want to go beyond what we have now, you have to look at a individual site and make a determination with respect to the seeker, and that's the hard look that's required. It doesn't mean that map is correct. We don't know how the regulations are going to change. That's part of the difficulty. We don't know whether the state's going to appeal or challenge. So there's a lot of things that are going to come from it. But for our board, I think you just have to understand, and as Councilman Warner has pointed out, and others, that that we have to take this hard look and consider this. And it's difficult, and the mapping, can't just be based upon, as we had before, the 100-foot area. The second part that I think the town needs to be, aware of is that, there's 2 pieces to this. There's the seeker review, and that's kind of what we're in right now, which is our environmental review and how we're going to go through that. And then there's our comp plan. We have to take that holistic approach and say, all right, so if we can't do certain things, let's make sure we're accomplishing what is required of the comp plan. And, so to look at this holistically, and where the state sort of got in trouble was, if we restrain other areas, we can't just say, oh, well, that's a positive for the environment, so we can stop our analysis there. That's how the state got in trouble. We have to say, okay, well, whatever changes we make, how else is that going to impact the rest of the town? And then we have to address those concerns. We had to do that anyway. This just highlights it. So we had been doing that and moving in a direction to consider these constraints that we're going to improve by changes to the LC. If we're narrowing that, I just want you to be aware of both planning staff's time and your consultant's time. They got to start over again. There's going to be a lot of additional work, and we need to do that work. But that's kind of what we're up against. And it depends on the board in the direction that you want to go. But I think your starting point is to pull out that comp plan again, to revisit that and say, yes, we're accomplishing our zoning consistent with our comp plan, and then let's clean up the other information to help with the seeker determination.
Can I say something, Steve?
Yeah.
I've sat here, I've heard everybody, I've heard.
You probably have to talk in the microphone too.
No,
Turn it on.
One thing we have not talked about today at all, and it's very concerning to me, is the landowner's rights has certain rights, and we shouldn't be taking that away from them. It's that simple.
Yeah. I guess I'd like to add to that. When I came into the meeting tonight, I had a lot of uncertainty about what was going on. It's one of my first meetings here, and the part of that concern was we don't know where other things are going, and this uncertainty is ahead of us with the state and so on. I also had a concern that from looking at comments that I heard and the people's faces, I don't know if the communications have been right. And I think that's a problem. Now, maybe I'm on the wrong side of the whole conversation here, but I just don't think I've heard enough, or you've had enough input as to where this might go. When we're talking about people's rights and people's land and the future of not the town, not just for who's sitting in this room, but the people who are coming behind us for the next 40 or 50 or 100 years. It's not just a current situation, it's for our future. And that concerned me before I got a chance to talk here. But I think I'm more comfortable tonight in the fact that we've agreed that we have to stop and take a look at this. But I would like more input from the community, the people that live here. Naturally, it's not just the people in this room it impacts people who don't show up. There's a lot of people who have maybe the other side of the conversation too, and they're not comfortable with what we're doing. But I just don't want to be charged here in a couple of years or a year when the state says you did something wrong, and we're here defending a decision we made. And I don't want to have a lot of unhappy residents in the town upsetting your lives. Not that we can please everyone, but we really have to look at what's going on out there. I need more input from the people that are sitting in this room. And we need some more communication, I think, as far as moving forward before we do anything. But the best idea here was been presented, and let's keep it where it is until we have a better plan. So hopefully we'll get there.
So what are you saying? We should revert back to the LC the way it was?
I'm not exactly sure where it should be, but what we're talking about is that seems to fit right now. And I don't know enough about the land use plan, but I don't know enough about what's necessary either. I know if it was my piece of property, I'd be upset. I want to know what's going on before it happens. No matter where I live in town, I live across from the Speedway, so I want to know what's going on at the Speedway as well. So it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. So I do think that I just need more input from people in the town in order to make a sound decision, and one that's not going to challenge us later on by some attorney in the state that's saying you did it wrong, or some landowner. So I'm a little more cautious, I guess.
And to add to both Craig and Don's points, I think we in Malta, we're afforded a very nice opportunity here where it's still a relatively small community where we can engage with the majority, if not every property owner that could be affected by this. So I stand in agreement, I think, with the two of you of we have to include the residents as much as possible
So
with decisions like this.
Seen that map, right? The dark is what is currently zoned, and the light is the current proposed, which, like we said, will change.
It's interesting to look at a map like this and try to make a decision on what should be happening.
It's really
Okay,
tough.
so I can look at this and say, yeah, it's right or it's wrong, because I don't know what's happening out here, and I don't know how it impacts the people who are involved. So it's a challenge to go through that, and I think that's why we need people like planners to help us through that process. But it's very difficult to look at this map and say, this is what we have to change, in my perspective at least.
And like I said, the object here is not to take away anybody's rights or anybody's land, or, I mean, you still own your land. Agriculture land, nothing changes. But it's also to try to protect the rural character of the area. I mean, you all live up there. I'm assuming you live up there because you like the country life. And, you know, one of the driving forces is we get a lot of complaints about development. But we need commercial development. So we're trying to keep the commercial development into a relatively an obvious commercial area to protect the rural characters of the town. And I understand that in some cases it's kind of, you know, scary and it may be overbroad. So I think we are going to take a hard look at it and tailor it back. And maybe in the end, we'll decide to stay with the old plan. Now, what I worry about that is that we're increasing the ability for people to actually build commercial, but not really protecting any place else from additional development. And I think it's important that we be mindful of that also. So,
I completely agree with that. And I think, I mean, the paper, or I guess the report that the planning staff had made, I think it really illustrates that their methodology and the way that they went about it was comprehensive, it was thorough, they knew what they were doing. And this map, I mean, you're absolutely right. On one hand, Don, yeah, you know, it looks far enough away, it's good, it looks like a good idea, but it's difficult to equate that into practice. And I think that's where, as I said at the start of this, nobody here is working against anybody. We're all trying to facilitate the same ideas. But I think we can afford the opportunity to get as many voices and as much input from the residents as possible here. So we can find a consensus for everybody that we can all agree to.
You think we can please everybody?
I'm gonna try. It probably won't work. Someone will be mad.
I'll give
But I'll
you
try.
3 years.
Well, that's my term.
You guys publishing the iterations of the map? Any reasons for changes?
okay, first of all, I'll answer that question, but I also don't want this to devolve into another public hearing because we had that and we will have another one.
I think it's practical because you're talking about them, but we don't have any reference.
Right. Everything is on our website. So the,
I don't think so.
what do you think is not on the website?
I think all iterations of the zoning attempts are on the website. I think we have the latest,
I think
and the reasons why we
the,
made the changes.
Do we have an
well, there's
draft
only
and-
been there's only been one change to the draft. So the original draft went out. The newest draft is still something we're talking about. It takes some lands out of the LC. But yeah, every time we do something else, it goes up on the website. One thing we realized is we weren't actually putting a date in the title, so you'll be able to more easily identify what's the newest thing because it will say the date that it was discussed or,
We've updated the maps with dates.
okay, so they've been updated with dates, so. And some of these are like in reports, but. So,
The last update to the website was on April 6th for the land conservation expansion and revised draft zoning map.
and that's this one,
Correct.
which is not the final iteration, so.
And there is a draft zoning map up without labels because some of the streets made it difficult to see where lot lines were. So we took street labels off, so it makes it harder to navigate the map, but if you know where you live, you should be able to find the street.
Just quick question for you. This was all, you made all these maps with what, ArcGIS Pro?
RTIS is,
Well, now it's what, Arc Pro or whatever, because they updated?
it's the latest version.
Yeah, we use it at work too, that's all.
Whatever the latest version is what we've been using.
I like GIS.
All right, does anybody else have any other comments? Okay, like I say, I let it happen, but it's not gonna be everybody.
Madam Supervisor, I'm John Canning, County Law PLC.
Yeah.
Communicated earlier today.
If you're gonna talk, you're gonna have to kind of find a microphone someplace,
I'll wheel it out to them.
because we are streaming.
I thank you. Is it one over here I can use?
That's it.
Is there one at the podium?
Nope.
You can use this one, here. This is ours. This was the one for the podium.
Thank you. I appreciate the board and the public's opportunity to speak today. I represent a couple of landowners in the town. This was just brought to my client's attention within the last week. It's been talked about that this has been going on for well over a year. Barton and LaJudas has been hired for well over a year. My clients have not known about it for less than a year, much less than a year, pretty much on 2 weeks or so. The total land mass in Malta has 31.4 square miles. Of that, there are 28 square miles that are land, 3.4 square miles that are water. That equates to 17,920 square acres. This proposal proposes to change 2,197 acres. That's 12% of the total square area of Malta. You can see by everybody in this room, that's a significant portion of the property. There's been significant issues with noticing with respect to this. Nobody's received anything. There has been a recent tax reassessment, though, and that could have been included in that mailing. The town has had, and I know some of the board has not been here for that, and so I want to try to educate you a little bit on that. There has been legal challenges to rezoning, specifically within the LC, within the last 5 years. That has resulted in multiple phases of litigation that the town has had to face. I'm happy to see Mr. Gottman here this evening. He'll make sure that that does not happen. I am very hopeful. He's a very good counsel, and I'm glad you all have him. But there is a precedent for that, and I think this board really needs to consider that and weigh carefully what changes you make. The biggest thing that I can see from this is why? Why now, and why this change? What is the purpose of it? I know that there's been some significant changes in the DEC regulation of wetlands, but why is this board and this town now trying to also put their foot into that murky water? Why are you trying to also step in and regulate wetlands that are already regulated? The biggest concern coming from what I've seen in the mapping that was done so far is the idea was to use what are known as informational wetlands. Okay, so that's how they were designated by DEC on the site. They were tagged as informational wetlands. Those are informational. It has actually a disclaimer on DEC's website that says to not be relied on by a developer. I represent a significant number of developers across the state. Why should the developers not be able to rely on them when they want to develop land, but a town board be able to rely on them when they want to restrict any development on the land? It doesn't seem like a fair fight. You also kind of overlay, and I've done it multiple times, overlay that mapping with what are previously mapped wetlands, and they just don't line up. You can have one part of the parcel show up in informational, and then the other part show up in previously mapped to take up the whole parcel. I also have some questions about the methodology used. I have a young son, he's in school. They always talk about show your work, right? Where's the overlay of the multiple layers of mapping that resulted in the map that you have now? Where's the overlay of the informational wetlands and the previously mapped wetlands over the town code to show how that map resulted? I think that's important.
Have you seen the methodology report?
I have. I've read it in detail.
Okay.
What I'm asking for is there should have been an overlay of one on top of the other. And then I understand there is some methodology in place, and it's been talked about a little bit here, and talked about by the team at Barton and LaJudas a little bit as well, that you have parcels that are then looked at individually and taken out for various reasons. But I think that's something that needs to be transparent rather than opaque and murky. The people who are going to be losing land value need to understand why that happens. Let's see here.
Are you getting close to done?
Yeah,
'Cause as I
I'm
said,
on page two of two.
Because this is not a public hearing.
Understood.
And you will have that opportunity at the public hearing.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's part of the reason
And
why
we
I
already,
I wanted
talked about
to
that this
speak
is-
because
okay.
it's
All right, you can go ahead.
I think it's informative to this board,
Yeah.
and because it's something that you brought up at the start of this meeting. Are you going to recommission people to do redrafting? Are you going to cancel the public meeting that's already been scheduled and noticed, or are you going to have it? And without knowing that, I just really wanted to get,
Yeah,
I
I
wanted to
mean,
get
we are
this
going
out
to
there.
cancel it because there's no sense of having a public hearing. We won't have a final map.
Well, and so I think this is, to me, this is gonna, I'm hopeful that this is gonna help inform the board and direct your consultants on what they need to do. Couple of things that that I felt were missed and left out of the redrafting that needs to be confronted. What happens in a split zone lot? How is that, how does a property that has LC and another zone, how can that property be used? Different municipalities do it very different ways. Sometimes they let you extend a boundary one way or the other based on the developer. Sometimes if you're in the zone, you're in the zone for the whole parcel, whether it's 10% or 90%. What about setbacks, within a split zone parcel? All of that is not confronted by the current code or in any of the drafts. I think that's something that, really kind of needs to be looked at. What about grandfathering of uses? I saw in the methodology, there was the idea that they tried to avoid parcels that were already developed, that might have or fall within the wetlands. I think those should be identified, so we can understand that. I did see that the town of Malta's ecological park was not in the LC zone, although that has significant amount of wetlands on it. So I think those are some of the things you want to look at when you go back and redo the zoning, redo the mapping.
It's part
And then, like I said, grandfathering should be looked at. When is this going to take effect? Are you going to have a sunset period for pending projects? And then this might be because I do this for a living and I have to read code all the time and I want to be able to go and look at one place. Why is the solar code and the battery storage code set out separately from the use and area tables? Why can't you go to the use and area tables and see what is required for those types of approvals? I think that makes a big difference. Like I said, I do this for a living as a developer. I do this as a transactional attorney. And I get people all the time and they say, well, I didn't even know that the zoning existed. Now people are starting to understand this more and they're going and looking at the use table. Now they can see they wouldn't even be able to know about your solar code unless they really dug down deep into it. It should be listed as a permitted use, especially ones that show for a special use permit, and et cetera. On the topic of the solar, I think the board should consider looking at the tiers and how those could potentially impact the rest of the town and especially neighbors. In tier 1, I can't remember the number, but you allow some certain number of wattage or whatever it is. I'm an attorney, I'm not an electrician, but you allow a certain number of production. And I looked it up, and that amount of production usually results from solar panels that are 1,100 square feet. And those can be ground mounted. And those are only required to be set back according to the accessory setbacks. And there's no site plan approval required. I don't believe there's even a building permit approval required. So that means you can be as close as a shed with an 1,100 square foot ground mounted solar array as you are to your neighbor's property line. I think that's 1,100 square feet. That's a bigger square footage than some of the footprints of many homes. It's a big number. I think it's something that the board should really kind of look at, not just of what the output is going to be, but what the potential impact on the neighbors is going to be. I did mention the tax reassessment. How is that going to be done? How are you going to reassess all of these newly LC parcels? And to Mr. Gottman's point, how is that going to affect the tax bill of the town? How is that going to affect, you're rezoning 12% of the town. How is that going to affect your budget? And again, we talked about statewide initiatives. There is a statewide housing crisis currently. It's been declared for a couple of years. There's a new development coming into Luther Forest. I believe they're going to be expanding the chip plant there. There's going to be more people. There's going to be more jobs. But by putting all of this in LC zone, you're reducing the potential number of lots. So I go back to why this, why now? Why are we focusing on wetlands? There's other things that can be conserved as well. So thank you all very much for your time.
right, well, if this board has no other comments, I think I'll entertain a motion to cancel the public hearing because we won't be ready for the public hearing next, on our meeting of April 27th.
I make that motion.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No.
We will have another public hearing. We can't adopt any legislation without a public hearing with advance notice, but I think it's premature to have it until we,
Yeah, you couldn't have it anyway because the local law on the map isn't updated. So
right,
it's a formality to let the public know that there's not going to be a public hearing. There'll be one rescheduled when we get the map done. There'll be more conversations, more town board meetings to discuss this further. But there's no public hearing on the 27th because the local law isn't complete.
right. We have to have a completed document to have a public hearing.
Keep it open.
We already had it open and closed it. And then this, like I said, we can't have a public hearing if we don't have a complete document to review, so.
And that doesn't stop.
People should be able to speak.
Well, that was what I was saying, was it wouldn't stop people from talking during public comment.
Yeah, what's your question?
Oh,
Alert system? You guys, you know what? Everything is pushed out. Go to the Town of Malta website, click on the notify me. Really? It shouldn't have. If you- Yeah, yeah. Or if you come in, I can look at it with you sometime. Oh, yes, we didn't vote. We voted. Yes, Craig said no.
That's why I want to talk to you about it, is it's the last thing.
No, the meeting she's talking about.
Huh?
Are you adjourning the meeting?
I guess so. I'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Any questions? No?
The last, I know that I'm going to be talking about it more.
I know.